We want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our American community. We believe that American patriots will not be free until we are liberated from the radical leftist ideologies, scare tactics, and violence.
Born against the stream, it don't matter what race or creed or color. You love this land and you're my brother. That ain't the place to know I'm gonna stand. If you say you can't breathe, I'll show you we can. Ain't never gonna stop believing. We were born for freedom. We were born for freedom.
Back down. We will not cower in fear. We're not going to hide any longer. Our president will be reelected. Our police will be backed. And our sanity will be restored. Power to the Patriots!
Yeah! Woo! All right, guys, Ragers. It's about time that we get a little bit more educated, and we've got some serious intellectuals on the live tonight. Buddy of mine, you guys have seen him before. You guys know him. You like him. He's a complete brain. I mean, I don't know what else to call him. My brother, Ian Hamilton Trottier. Ian, I'm going to bring you on in just a second, but just a little refresher. Ian was on the show. We talked about banking. We talked about the Vatican. We got into some really heavy stuff that applies to how everything affects us today. And he's brought along some of his friends. We've got Ralph and March. I'm going to throw them in for just a second. But Ian, before we bring in Ralph and March, I know you're on limited time, Ian. Welcome back to the show, brother. It's so good to have you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Yeah, it's nice to join Red Pill Rage again. And look, today we're pulling this together, really kind of an emergency broadcast, because people need to realize that we're being stripped of our rights right underneath us. And what I'm getting at here, Jenny, is I've used the domain hosting site. It's called YOLA, YOLA.com. I've been using them for close to 15 years. And without any precedence, without any inclination, without any pre-ordinance, I received an email this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time that my websites are being taken down. And they gave me the reasoning of that they don't support soapboxing and or expose type websites. So again, this is total violation of freedom of press. This is a violation of my ability to post my own research. And if any of your listeners have gone to my websites, I simply expose literature from high credible sources. I talk about Dr. Anthony Sutton frequently. He taught at Stanford for 7 years. He goes into the banking corruption behind the Federal Reserve in the United States. Look, I have taken sides politically recently because I will not stand for our statues being taken down. I won't stand for these millionaire athletes taking knees and not honoring our flag, not honoring our anthem. And so, yes, I definitely sided with Trump. for the 2020 campaign, and that has come out in reflection of the two sites that I want to address here. Trottier.com. Donald Trump called me a prize fighter about 7 months ago for my efforts in exposing the Google whistleblower, Zach Voorhees, and he thanked Voorhees and called him an American hero. And now the other site of much attention at this moment is stopcommunism.net, because this is, in my view, this is exactly what's happening. This is a communist infiltration into our government. They've been here for decades. Okay, the McCarthy hearings, the communist efforts have been here for decades. Stop Communism listed in detail all of the publications I was using to support my claim that this communist infiltration has done so by hijacking our banking industry. Now, there's a guy named Patrick Wood that used to write with Anthony Sutton, and he currently writes extensively. It's called technocracy.news. This is a technocrat takeover. The technology is being used to censor us, to shape our thoughts, our minds, and we've got to stop it. We've got to stop it. Americans, you must stand up. So I have two guests with me, as you mentioned, Jenny. March is a friend of mine, and an acquaintance of yours as well, Jenny. We met him in DC this past this past visit, and he has introduced me to software programmer Ralph. Ralph
Yazzo, yeah.
Ralph Yazzo. Now, this is really, Ralph has spent probably 2 hours with me trying to get the information off of these websites that are now blocked. Yes, yola.com has blocked them. There's not an increment of them accessible publicly right now. Ralph and I have tried for about 2 hours to try to get this retransferred to a different domain name, get the information reposted so that people can read this. And Ralph was saying that the stopcommunism.net was receiving some pretty good traffic here for only having been live now for about 10 days, getting some pretty good traffic. And so Ralph, New York based, you and March work together. Take it away. Would you please introduce yourself and give listeners a little bit about who you are?
Sure. My name is Ralph Yazzo, and I live here in New York City. I'm a computer programmer, and I did look at the issue here, and this particular company, yola.com, actually is kind of a lock-in site, right? Because you spend a lot of time, 15 years, right? Ian, 15 years you've been building on that site, right?
On the server,
right?
yes. That's
yeah,
correct.
You can
on
hear me,
server,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you've built a lot of things there. And literally they send a letter. I don't know if you wanted to show the letter that describes that you have to get everything off, and they have no button. They have no way to get out of it. They basically said, just take screenshots of the building tool and try to recreate it someplace else. And I looked, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, and it's just not reasonable to do that and to give no warning, because we could have used tools to get the information out of the site using crawler tools, the spider tools. Well, we can't do it because now they blocked. They tell us that it's blocked, and then they block it. Then they tell us that it's blocked. That's completely unfair. And I have to say, I'm a helper at the Google events, and Google kind of does the opposite. They always want you to have a way to export things out. So almost always, not every single case. So I would say that this is not correct. I guess private companies have a right to do whatever they can or do in their terms of service, but freedom of speech only means something if someone can hear the speech, right? You might have the freedom of speech to scream all you want, but if nobody can hear it, what's the point in having freedom of speech? So the internet is the way to get your voice out, right? So
it's also the way to censor it, apparently.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly. So do you want me to introduce March? Because I'd like to come back and talk about some inequity in New York City, but has to do with homeowners and private.
Ralph, you make things. You make things on the internet. And I mean, can we craft something, on a local server? Can we, download all this information from this so that we can help Ian out? Because I mean, I want to solve problems. I'm a problem solver. I'm an architect. We've worked together. We've created a zoning application for New York. And yes, I'd like to talk more about your skills in, like, getting things out there. And I also like to talk a little bit about my profession in architecture. I just yesterday was on the phone for about an hour and a half with a New York City developer who I have to apply to for jobs, right? And this particular developer, owns the land beneath the World Bank in Washington, D.C. And do you know what we talked about? And I have to drop down on a knee here to express my, concern about my friend that I've known for 20 years almost. And he says that in, Martin Luther's time in the 1500s, that they invented a printing press that made prints of the Bible, right? The Bible, which we would all expect that we can, have access to. But in 1500s, you couldn't have access to the Bible. Martin Luther had to go nail on a door of the Catholic Church, I would like, you guys to let people read the Bible. Can you imagine? Can you imagine something like that? In that is a little bit like what we're dealing with today. My friend who owns the land beneath the World Bank says to me in Washington, D.C., he says that, we didn't have, I couldn't believe it. This guy said to me that the internet, should be restricted. He said that the internet should be restricted. So
Well, March,
I don't
March,
know. I don't know. I mean,
March,
I'm trying to figure it out.
I want to answer your
I'm trying to
question.
serve these people. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm trying to serve these people. I don't understand. Why would he say that? Why would he say that?
I want to answer your question that there is technical ways to use the internet to help us, right? And I don't quite understand this yola.com and why they did what they did, but they have the right to do it. It's just that we always have to be, as a programmer, I always plan for things to break or for people to stop. You kind of have to always be planning, and you always have to have a local backup. So that's what I do. And so all the sites that I create are backed up on my machines, and I can recreate them someplace else. And I always duplicate things everywhere. So I can show a site, if it's okay, I can show a tool to use the internet for good, or it depends on what you mean by good, but to use the internet to get your voice out, right? And I have to say that Google is a mechanism to get your voice out, even though it's hard. It's not easy to do. There is ways to do it. So I realize this is like the marketing part, but I think it ties together. You're asking the question, how do we solve problems instead of just complaining?
Right.
I don't want to just sit around. I don't want to sit around and just complain and complain and complain. So what I did is I built a site and I put it into the Google search engine, right? There's something called Search Console. And you literally tell Google, I created a site with millions and millions of pages, right? And it's not easy to do. No one writes millions and millions of articles, right? but I'm showing the site right here. I don't know, is the screen share on, right?
I can see. Yeah.
And it's a simple site called nyc.titleforce.org. And on Google, you can always just type site : and then any site. And it'll tell you how many pages are in the Google index. Because the only way to show things, the way to be in organic search, which is the non-ad part of Google, right, is to be in the index, right? So you can see this site is just brand new and it already has 651 pages indexed, which is kind of cool. I just created it and it already has, and I hope it goes up to 1 million. But I can show a site like typically these big sites like Zillow. Look at how many pages they have indexed. 39 million pages, or almost 40 million pages.
Ralph, can you hear me? Do you mind explaining a little bit what indexing means?
In order to show up in Google search, you have to be in the Google index.
Okay.
I know I hope this is not too much off topic, so cut me off if it is, but so everybody wants to be found, right? The only way for people to find you is if Google has indexed that page.
Okay.
Right? Because when somebody types into Google, it's not as if Google's going out and just trying to find the page right there and then. No,
Guys.
they crawl the internet and then they put the pages into their database.
Google creates its own database of pages, right? They're
A
called
copy of the internet, yes.
a copy of the
Ralph,
internet. Google
let me
copies the
stop
internet.
you.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me stop you. Hold on, because I'm gonna say one thing, and then I'm gonna let the two of you run with Jenny and Red Pill, because I've got to pull away. But let me just, and Ralph, I want you to come back to this, and then try to tie it around, try to come back around for listeners for censorship. But Ralph, I want you to give that knowledge out for her viewers. I've got to leave the conversation. So let me just say this real briefly. That's one of the great things about the United States is freedom of press. And if we're being attacked on it, which I was blocked out of Twitter. I was blocked out of Twitter 2 months ago because I tweeted about Benghazi and Joe Biden, and immediately I was knocked out of Twitter. Now my personal websites are under attack. Okay, so we've got to rewrite Section 230. But what's most important here is how this is tying in March, as you alluded to, is the banking. How is all this tying into the corrupt banking institution? Look, the tyranny in banking is exactly how they're holding us in chains, and they're using it in a digital format. All right, they're using the internet in basically, and this is my view, the invention of the telephone, which has evolved into this internet and transformation on the superhighway, information on the super. They're using that to try to digitize the economy with a $26 trillion federal debt. We are in total bondage to these people. We have no gold in Fort Knox, per Dr. Peter Beater, that spoke about that in the early 70s. I know this is a real vague brush to stroke with, but you have to remember that if people can be silenced and if people can be censored, which I am now being censored, perhaps there are many viewers that are also being censored. If your speech and the information can be squashed, then there's absolutely there's no way you're going to get any traction via the internet. You'll have to go other means, which will take a long time. Mainstream media obviously is being censored.
No,
then
Ian, if you're a small business today, which I am, and you depend on PPP, or if you're a small restaurant owner in New York City, you depend on PPP. I mean, it's a little bit of like, they're already trying to just give us the blue pill, right? I mean, they're trying to give us, just sedition. They're trying to just bring us into the wave of just accepting the government and accepting the government money, and it's
kill the middle class.
It's just not the way it's not the way the Americans think, and it's not the way that we do things here, and it's really upsetting. It's really upsetting. I mean, how
all right, I'm going to pull away. March, Jenny, I'm going to pull away. Ralph, I'm going to pull away. I gotta get up early. I've got a couple things to tie up before.
Please tell us more about the banks. Please, just for a few more minutes. Just like what is your deal with the banks, and why is the Federal Reserve something that you're against? What, help me
Well,
understand.
look,
Maybe that's why they took you down.
Hey, you know
Maybe
what?
that's
You know what,
why
guys?
they took you
Ian really
down.
does need to go.
yeah,
Ian
thanks.
does
Meeting
really
continues
need to
again.
go.
Jenny, thanks.
So we're going to respect that. We're going to honor that. Thank you so much, Ian, for your time. It's good to see you. I can't wait to see you in just a few days.
Yes. Yeah, you guys rock. Good. Okay. All right, we'll talk
All right.
soon.
Have a good night. Okay.
Well,
All right.
well,
All right.
well,
So,
you know what? I would like to speak a little bit about Ralph and his ability to bring to public what government says. And he has created a really unique website that that emphasizes what City Council says to New York City citizens. And if Ralph, you could speak a little bit about that, I think it's important for the public and something that they can maybe follow up on, because viewership there is not what we would hope it to be. And if you could talk about that, please.
Yeah, I can, but is the screen showing my screen? Is that okay? Yeah,
do you want your
because I
screen
think
up?
it would be more meaningful for the
Okay, no
people.
problem. No problem. There you
And
go.
so what March is talking about is a website. It's just a YouTube channel called New York City Council Videos Unofficial, because it never became official, because our New York City Council spends hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, to produce these videos. But they're locked inside of a website that was Flash-based, and it didn't even work on phones. So I made a Freedom of Information Act request and asked, first of all, why are the videos on a Flash player? No, 90% of the internet now is on mobile phones, and nobody can even see the videos. And we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars producing these videos that nobody can look at, right? So they answered my Freedom of Information Act request, and they told me where the videos are. So this was about 4 or 5 years ago. And so since then, I've been taking all the videos and religiously sending them up to YouTube. And here they are. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And what you'll notice is there's no views, almost no views. Maybe because the naming convention is kind of boring to watch 4 hours of city council talking about cultural affairs and fire. But I would hope that people care about their own city council. This is where hundreds of thousands of dollars, oh no, it's hundreds of millions of dollars get spent, right? So, yeah, in New York City's budget is $100 billion. So this is where the city council is supposed to be the watchdog for the people.
Our budget is $100 billion.
New York City, yeah, New York State is $160 billion, and let me just show that. Unless I'm getting the numbers wrong, let me just double check that. Yeah, under here. City, and let's just look at the expenditures here. And if you look at this, it's showing in millions. So yeah, it's 100. So you see this, it's in millions, and it's 100,000. So it's 100 billion,
Yeah.
right? And it's just going through the roof. You see the trend, right? The trend is growing at 5%.
Right.
Sometimes it's grown at 12%. I ask the people out there, is your income growing at 12% every year? I don't think so. Like, incomes have stagnated according to everyone.
So Ralph, you and I live in New York City. What is the incentive for someone that doesn't live in New York City to pay for the cost that we need to support New York City? What are people like our governor and our mayor going to do to
as everyone leaves, it's going to be
well,
hard.
I won't say everyone is going to leave. Look, we're going to be fine, you and I, because we're going to have less tourists. We're going to have less, less people to deal with. Maybe that's better for us, because we're going to be. I'm pretty happy here. You're pretty happy here. There, you got some property that you own. So, but let's think about it. I'm just trying to, put it in a bigger picture there.
So tying it all back to censorship, I think there is ways we have to work together just the way we're doing right now. And thank you, Jenny, for the opportunity. And look, there's technology. We can use Google for what it's good at, is creating organic search. And I don't see Google censoring. I see others saying, yeah, Google's not even in the social, they used to have whatever it was, Google Plus, but I don't even think that exists anymore. So Google organic search is a way to promote the internet. So I just want to tie this back to inequity in the property tax system, right? Because it all ties back to the taxpayer. And if we look at our friend S7000A, you can see that the internet, the property tax is paying the bills. So if you search here and you look at property tax as a percent of expenditures, you can also see that it's going through the roof, right? It's supposed to be around 20% in good times, and we've been in good times, supposedly, right? But yet it's going up, 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 up. And this is not me talking. This is the New York City Independent Budget Office speaking, right? They're supposed to be like the Congressional Budget Office. They're independent. And I'm just taking the data from the Independent Budget Office and putting it so that people can see it. But even here, it's very hard to get the word out, right? So New York City, if it's going to tax the people to death, right? The homeowners, the only people that work here are being taxed to death. Well, they either will leave or they won't pay it. And then we'll end up with a whole bunch of condemned buildings, which is a blight. And we don't want that, right? You don't
Ralph,
want to.
But can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep talking, and I'm like, so I don't want to interrupt you, but you're right on target. You're right on target. So continue, please.
Yeah, and I'm just going to show one example of a tool that we can use on the internet. This was built just a few weeks ago, and you just basically type in names, and you can see the inequity in your neighborhoods. So it basically gives a rating actually on your property tax, right? Property tax is going to go through the roof. In Milwaukee, they just, there was news on their property tax went up 60%. And they said, why is it going up 60% in the times of COVID, right? These are hard times, and their property tax is going up 60%. In New York City, we actually have a tricky law called S7000A. And by definition, the tax rate never goes up. So the politicians can say that the tax rate is stable. What do you mean the tax rate is stable? It hasn't gone up in 10 years, 20 years. But they changed the assessed value of your property so that your effective tax goes up 6% every year. And if you look at inflation, it's near zero. You look at wages, it's near zero. You look at
Ralph, I was with you at New York City Council, okay? Because we talked about New York City Council earlier in all your videos. And I was with you. You remember that time that we went to Brooklyn?
Yes, absolutely.
It was about Christmas. Was it last year? Christmas time?
Yes. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Maybe it was 2 years before.
It was called the Property Tax Reform Commission, right?
That's right. And there was there was many people present there, and there were many city people on city council. I think was Eric Adams there? I don't remember, but
I don't think so. It was more the.
He's running for mayor. And he's running against my friend Curtis Lewa, who I was with earlier tonight. So
he's our neighbor. He's our neighbor. Yeah, Eric is our neighbor. Yeah.
Eric, yeah. Don't really trust that guy, to be honest with you. But
hold on. Sorry, guys. Sorry, I have to hold on. That's how you get doxxed. Don't tell anyone on the internet who your neighbors are, okay? So be careful with that. And I know you're just learning. Ralph, today you actually just learned where are we? You actually just learned what doxing means. So let me just ask you a question. I want to wrap it all up. I want to tie it all together. Real quick, first of all, how can you see Google being used by a terrorist organization to attack patriots, number one? And number two, do you have any action items? I mean, you definitely just gave out a lot in terms of motivating the patriots to be more proactive and knowing where their city councils are having their meetings and what the content of the conversations are, because these are the people who are actually, you know, raising the taxes, those fraction of percentages for bills that we never even knew that we voted for or didn't vote for. So yeah, so once again, let's talk about how you learned about doxing today, and then get whatever your action items are for the Patriots. And then March, I'm going to have you close with your action items as well.
Well, I agree with you that we can use the internet. You asked the question, how do who was it use Google to attack?
Yeah, like if a terrorist organization wanted to, you know, you learned about, okay, so listen, Patriots, Ragers. So it's just a little quick funny story. Before we came in the live, I was kind of like pre-gaming everyone and like giving everyone a little you know, kind of like getting the content of what we were going to say together. And Ralph had never heard the term doxing before. So literally his first time learning about doxing is from Red Pill Rage. So welcome to the world of digital mind psychological warfare, Ralph. You are now a part of it. You are now on our team. So, you know, skip that question. Maybe, you know, maybe it doesn't tie in together. But what are your action items for the Patriots?
Well, as I was showing, is we can use the internet for good, to get our word out. I don't think that the internet is completely censored. I think, you know, I come from a technology background, and Google is just a tool that we can use, and all of them, all the search engines, to get, you kind of want, yeah, freedom of speech is only useful if other people can hear your speech, right? I mean, you have freedom of speech to scream all you want, but if no one hears it, it doesn't, you know, you can't get your word out. So I think that I have a positive attitude on the internet. I don't think everything is censored. Of course, you know, one particular company can do something very strange like what happened with Ian, but that's not everybody. And remember, that particular company was practically giving away the service. So they probably said, this is too much headaches. And so the action item is to be positive and use, you know, I think use technology for what is good. I would love to leave with this, is that government and technology should work together, because what I see in government is a lack of technology and a lack of knowledge and very wasteful. And so I'm not Republican or Democrat. I'm just against waste. I don't like to see waste all over the place. And so I prefer to have a community budget council where the community is seeing the budget, right? The way it works now is we see nothing. We in New York City get a 10,000 page PDF file, and there's budget items there, and they mean nothing. They mean absolutely nothing. There's all these codes, and there's a whole department, I think it's OMB, Office of Management and Budget. And I say that every day or every week, they should come on and show the spending for that week. We have something called checkbook.nyc. It's incomprehensible. It's completely useless, right? Just go to it, checkbook.nyc, and try to figure out anything on it, right? We should have talks. So I'll let, you know, I can go on forever. So I'll move on to March. March, what is your, what did you call it, Jenny?
You have so much. You have so much to say, Ralph. You want me to speak, but you
Yeah.
and I submitted a proposal to the New York City Department of Finance. Do you remember the zoner proposal where we built a database of a digital database, a 3D map of all the tax map of New York City? Do you remember that? We were a competitor for an RFP, and that was awarded. It was never awarded. We were 4 times lower than the nearest competitor, you know? So the New York City, does it like to waste? Yes, it likes to waste. That's the answer. They didn't give us that job. They didn't give us that job because we weren't a big company. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, there's a little bit of like passion in this speech. Am I with the team here? Is everybody still here? Can everybody hear me? I'm not sure. Are we gone? Hello?
I can hear you. I need your action items.
Oh, my action items. Well, I think what we need to do is act on freedom of speech that we're working with tonight. I mean, Adam, Ian, in your work, obviously are being censored by the internet, and you know, Ralph in our work is being censored by New York City contracts. So, you know, because we want to expose, well, not expose, but we want to do good work. You know, I mean, my action items. Well, I'd like to just continue to, as a small business. I mean, that's what I'd like to do. That's about it.
Oh my God, that's how tired I am. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so one thing that Ralph and I was talking about in the pregame, and what I loved him talking about, is Google doesn't censor. And he was saying, you know, he doesn't come at it from an emotional standpoint. And one thing that I talk about in my gambling show, Watch the Line, is learning how to bet without putting your emotions into it. So learning how to use Google as a tool instead of putting your emotions into it, we got to use that to our advantage. And, you know, to make it a very simple, plain term, what he's talking about is spamming the internet. And that's what I'm doing. And I swear to God, people, it is working. So I've got like 15 profiles, all Red Pill Rage. Okay. I've got Red Pill Rage on iTunes. I've got Red Pill Rage on Google. I've got my Red Pill Rage YouTube channel. And I'm literally putting myself at the top of the search. And I personally set out to take the term Red Pill Rage back from the MGTOW community. And here I am, a woman, a honey badger, at the top of the Red Pill Rage search. And it's because I'm constantly spamming the internet with Red Pill Rage. So that's what Ralph was talking about. It was a great discussion. Again, you know, what the New York City is spending alone, 160 billion. New York State spending 160 billion. That's insane. And we as taxpayers are paying for that. And we're not even watching what they're doing. You know what? We want to make everyone else, we as conservatives, we always want to make everyone else accountable, but we need to make ourselves accountable. So, you know, it's time to get to business, patriots. It's time to get to business, ragers. You know, time to get accountable. time to take these action items, and let's use Google. We don't have to be afraid of Google. We can use Google to my and yours and everyone's advantage. You know, so let's not shy away from being shamelessly self-promoting our messages. Let's not be shy from that. Let's not back down from that. We can use Google to get what we want. Okay. If Ralph says that Google is a little bit more impartial than we formerly believed, you know what? That frees us up out of the emotion to get to work. So thank you guys again. We're going to have them back on the show. I would like to have you guys back individually so we can actually do some Q&A and some back and forth, and maybe, you know, kind of focus in on one issue a little bit better. But that was great, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast. Thank you, Ragers. If you have not visited my website, the Red Pill Rage website is up, redpillrage.net. Make sure that you're joining me on the Patreon. And guys, I'm blowing up on TikTok. You better get in while it's good. And you better get in while I'm looking busted, because once I get some money behind me, you know, I'm going to be looking a lot better, and you guys can say you knew me way back when.